All right, fifth graders, this is Mr. Combs here, and I'm going to be reading you the text, Angel Island. So as we read, I want you to be thinking about what conditions were like for Chinese immigrants when they arrived in the United States. So without any further ado, this is Angel Island by Alice K. Flanagan. Okay, the history of Angel Island. Angel Island is one of the largest islands in California's San Francisco Bay. In 1775, the Spanish explorer Don Juan Manuel Ayala sailed into the bay, stopping at what is now Ayala Cove. His men explored the bay and made a map of the region. Because the island seemed to protect the bay like a guardian angel, Ayala named it Isla de los Angeles, Spanish for Island of the Angels. Okay, and so here's a photo or picture of where Angel Island is in San Francisco Bay. In 1910, the United States built an immigration station at the northeast corner of the island in the area known as China Cove. For the next 30 years, it served as the main point of entry for thousands of immigrants coming into the United States through the West Coast. It was known as the Guardian of the Western Gate. Okay, here's a picture of Angel Island Immigration Station, and we can see that it was a complex that had many, many buildings. The immigration station was set up to receive people from Asia and Europe. However, only a few Europeans were ever detained at Angel Island during these years. Japanese immigrants, too, were generally allowed to enter San Francisco soon after their ship docked, and their paperwork was sent to the immigration station. For the most part, immigration officials detained only the Chinese who they wanted to keep out of the United States. So here we see a photo, and the caption says, "Few European immigrants entered the United States through Angel Island." Okay, why the Chinese came. The Chinese began coming to the United States in the 1840s, shortly after gold was discovered in California. At the time, wars and poverty in China forced many young men to leave their homeland for a better life. Believing the stories they had heard about streets paved with gold, the Chinese joined more than 500,000 other people from around the world who flooded into the California mountains searching for gold. The Chinese called California Gamsan, land of the Golden Mountains. Newspapers called this worldwide event the Gold Rush. Okay, here we can see a photo. Many Chinese left their homeland to look for gold in California. Like all hopeful miners, the Chinese believed that they would get rich quickly in California. Then they would return home to take a place of honor in their families. But discrimination kept the Chinese from mining in areas where gold was plentiful, and taxes took money away from those who did well. Only a few lucky individuals ever made a fortune as miners. Usually, the Chinese worked together and shared what they found. Whenever they could, they sent money home to their families. In 1851, a second wave of Chinese laborers started to arrive in the United States. This group of immigrants came to California to build the western half of the Transcontinental Railroad, and they continued to arrive through 1864. Okay, here we see some Chinese railroad laborers later worked in California vineyards. Okay, here's another photo. Stores in San Francisco's Chinatown catered to the taste of Chinese immigrants. After the railroad was completed in 1869, many Chinese took various jobs on farms and ranches. Using their knowledge of farming, these immigrants created successful fruit-growing businesses and helped build the first vineyards in California. Other Chinese immigrants worked to improve the fishing and canning businesses along the west coast from San Diego north to Alaska. Those who settled in the San Francisco Bay Area opened grocery stores, restaurants, and laundry shops. The neighborhood where their businesses were located was called Chinatown. Okay. Chinese are not welcome. More than 300,000 Chinese laborers entered the United States between 1849 and 1882. In those days, there were no immigration laws such as quotas to keep people out of the country. Everyone came and went freely. This freedom was due in part to the Burlingame Treaty, an agreement that the United States and China signed in 1868. It gave American and Chinese citizens the freedom to travel back and forth between the United States and China and stay as long as they liked. The treaty was named after Anson Burlingame, an American official serving in China at that time. When the Chinese first began to settle in the United States, they were welcomed, especially by business owners. The Chinese took jobs that no one else wanted, and they were willing to work long hours for long wages. But when companies began hiring Chinese workers for jobs that Americans wanted, feelings toward the Chinese changed. Some angry American workers attacked the Chinese, believing that the Chinese were taking away their jobs. In remembering these times, one Chinese man said, "We kept indoors after dark for fear of being shot in the back. Children spit upon us as we passed and called us rats." As the persecution got worse, mobs destroyed Chinese homes and businesses, killing women and children in the process. Afraid for their lives, many Chinese fled east to larger towns. When riots began breaking out in several cities, the U.S. government passed laws to stop more Chinese from coming to the United States. The laws, which were passed in 1882, were called exclusion laws. They kept Chinese laborers out of the United States for 10 years. They did not, however, exclude Chinese teachers, tourists, merchants, students, or their wives and children. These people were allowed to live and work in the United States even though they could not become citizens. When their children were born in the United States, however, they became citizens at birth. Later on, other laws were passed to limit a Chinese person's right to travel. One of these laws said that no Chinese laborer in the United States shall be permitted, after having left, to return hereto. Only individuals whose wives or children lived in the United States were allowed to leave and return. Those who owned land or businesses worth more than $1,000 could leave and return also. Another law made all Chinese laborers in the United States carry papers to prove that they lived in the United States. Anyone found without a paper could be arrested and returned to China. So here we see in 1885, 15 Chinese coal miners in Wyoming were killed by a mob of white miners. Okay, I'm going to stop the video here and we'll have a part 2 for this text. So thank you for listening, and please click on to part 2 next so you can finish the text.